The voice of sharing, dünya
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, good morning. This is Arlene.
Hi, this is Grace.
And of course, you are with us in the second week of this month of June, where we bring you news from Southeast Asia at our ASEAN Daily. So to start off, we actually want to share with you guys on our condolence towards the victims of the Sabah quake. And for Singapore, Monday will be the day of national remembrance for the earthquake victims.
Which is exactly today, and the death toll is apparently rising, and also at the same time more bodies are discovered from the happened place, and as the confirmed yes, and also as the confirmed death toll of those from the Singapore reached 8 today, and also PM Lee Hsien Loong declared which is today is the remembrance of the earthquake victims.
So state flags will be flown at half-mast and 1 minute of silence will be observed at all SEA Games venues. On the other hand, besides Singapore, there were other nationalities that also perished at the Mount Kinabalu during the earthquake in Sabah, and they were foreign nationals from China and other countries as well. And for Sabah mountain guides, interestingly, they were being hailed as unsung hero in this rescue mission on the earthquake for the Mount Kinabalu victims.
And this earthquake was almost 6th degree, and which is considered pretty strong. And the Sabah parks unloaded 4 photographs of the mountain guides and also park rangers as they swung into the actions, and also they braving damaged trails and making multiple trips to help all the stranded and the weakened climbers descend to safety.
This is the first time actually
it
ever happened in Malaysia when you talk about earthquake at this magnitude. In fact, this is something that is totally unheard of for Sabahan, I presume. And for these mountain guides to be able to shield the mountaineers and putting them into safer place, and of course some of them even share their jackets so that they can ensure that those who climb the mountain at that time will be able to shelter from the freezing cold. But a lot of criticism were being directed towards not the native guides but towards Malaysian government's rescue mission personnel. They said that they were not quick enough. In fact, even though they had the equipment such as the helicopter, but it took them almost 9 hours to reach to the first victims.
It's not a surprise when the Malaysian government really doesn't take an immediate action. That's what I meant. However, all these the rescue efforts are recognized by the state government instead, and which is honestly a good news. However, a lot of people are asking questions again. Where is the immediate reaction, or where is the immediate sort of solution to this from the Malaysian government itself?
Malaysian government definitely is watching close by from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
This is according to, of course, our Prime Minister Najib, who is
Right.
already in the Middle East. In a Twitter post by Prime Minister Office account at Najib Razak on Sunday, he said that he's assuring the public, although he was in Jeddah, he was still overseeing the search and rescue mission in Sabah.
Well, off air, you just mentioned about the relationship between the Malaysia and also Saudi Arabia. And according to PM Minister Najib, he said, "I assure you that every effort is being made by the government agency to seek and save all who are stranded in the mountainous areas." And also, this is regarding the the Sabah earthquake incident. So it is very interesting that Saudi Arabia, out of all the countries, one particular area is monitoring us, and it's so closely.
Well, he's doing his best, I presume as well.
Hopefully.
But just to talk about Najib, he's on a 3-day official
Yep.
visit to Saudi Arabia, accompanied by Defense Minister Datuk Sri Hishamuddin Tun Hussein, Home Minister Datuk Sri Zahid Hamidi, Foreign Minister Datuk Sri Anifa Aman,
Right.
and Minister in the Prime Minister's Office Department Datuk Sri Jalil K. Baharom. You know, even though I want to talk about the earthquake victims and what is happening in Sabah right now, but I'm also giving a big question marks. All the important ministers are in Saudi Arabia right now. I wonder why. I think this is one question that we need to ask the government. Like, what is this visit all about? You bring like the whole team of your top officers there. So it must be something really important for the government to have a 3-day visit there.
I guess it is important for them, but then the question is, if they are going to Saudi Arabia, who's gonna take in charge here to rescue all those people and then take an immediate actions to this? I mean, this is quite unexpected natural disaster in Sabah.
Usually when the Prime Minister is outside of the country, of course the Deputy Prime Minister will be in charge.
Of
In
course.
this case will be Muhyiddin Yassin. He was actually in Sabah giving a press conference, but his presence wasn't felt that much. Do you feel?
Well, it wasn't really recognized much as if PM was there to help out. Yeah.
And talking about SEA Games, just a bit of an update. Besides the calling for 1 minute silence during the SEA Games venues, or in all SEA Games venues and events, just also a bit of an update about the medal tally. Even though that Singapore and Malaysia right now is definitely being pounded by a lot of sad news, especially the sad news regarding on the death of a few teachers and students who were there on their school holiday trip. But at the same time, we have to say that Singapore has done really well at the SEA Games. They managed to garner 26 golds, 20 silver and 37 bronze. And they are now on top of the chart for the SEA Games medal tally.
So out of all the Southeast Asia countries, like you mentioned, Singapore scores the top, and the next one is Vietnam, and then Malaysia ranks 5th so far. Yeah.
Still a lot to catch up for Malaysia.
Yep.
Also, another update is the last week's event, Nothing to Hide.
Right. That was really viral on social media, and the people were literally raging over what happened, and then between the Mahathir and as well as Najib.
In fact, one of our journalists, Gauri Krishna, was there to witness the whole fiasco on the Nothing to Hide event. Of course, Najib wasn't there, and in fact, the person that took on the center stage unexpectedly was Tun Mahathir Mohamad,
Right.
our former Prime Minister.
And he was also pushed in middle of his speech by policemen. And then that particular video also went very viral, as well as the photos of the policemen trying to address Tun Mahathir to stop his speech in the middle way. So there was something, and there were a lot of angers from especially NGO people, because they were waiting for PM to appear, but unexpectedly it was Tun M who appeared in that place, and people wonder they were there to listen, but after halfway people were so angry.
I believe it's a bad PR move from the Prime Minister's part. But at the same time, there were talks that, there were whispers that the person who did the PR, responsible for the PR work, was our Lim Kok Weng, the founder of the Lim Kok Weng University. Because of that, the relationship between our former Prime Minister Tun Mahathir and Lim Kok Weng has somehow soured a bit.
Yeah, and after that, it was just a few hours after that incident, what happened was our PM Najib told the public that I wasn't there because it was not a calm situation at all. If the negotiation needs to be made, it has to be in the calm situation. And perhaps this is his own PR method to tell people, but that only brings more anger from public.
Yes. I don't know how would you deal it if it's in South Korea. Probably will be like a joke of the day of the year probably.
Could be.
Anyway, we'll take one short break. When we return, we will focus on the regional politics, of course, in Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Welcome back. This is Grace.
Of course, you are with us on our ASEAN Daily. So, on our political news regionally, do you know that US-Vietnam alliance could be a possibility? So, China, you have to get ready.
So is China being threatened by the relationship between US and Vietnam at the moment?
Could be. And the US and Vietnam have just signed a joint vision statement. But don't expect them to join forces against China. An alliance is ultimately straw man's talk, but provided a useful way to look at the US-Vietnam-China triangle. It seems like Vietnam is stuck in the middle of US and China when it comes to the geopolitical struggle between these both superpower.
And if I'm not mistaken, there was a relationship between China and Vietnam, and then the tension. I guess the tension between them is pretty bad at the moment, and having the relationship with US and Vietnam, China may get really, really jealous.
Yeah, relationship between Vietnam and China has been soured, especially with the South China Sea conflict. But the US and Vietnam, they haven't had quite close relationship since probably since in the past, but recently because of the South China Sea issue, they seem to have a lot more common interests with each other than before. But at the same time, I think Vietnam is being pushed to the center stage where it becomes, I would say, a ping pong between the US and China triangle.
So what happened was the question here is what kind of relationship they will build between US and Vietnam, and also we can also look into the interest of its compelling story about the formal force as well. But since last year, when China moved to oil rig into Vietnamese EEZ and set off the riots outside the Taiwanese factories, that killed people, the speculation has grown, and also it might an alliance between these two formal force and useful, or even if it, the question is if it is it even possible for this relationship.
That's true. And we reported in last week regarding on Defense Secretary Ashton Carter's visit to sign the joint vision statement on defense relations. In fact, the US and Vietnam hope will support expansion of military ties, including a pledge of $18 million by the US to help Vietnam to buy some US patrol boats, and it's also going to set up a site to train Vietnamese troops for UN peacekeeping mission. So it's an all-out war against China if you look at the bigger picture here. In fact, the US might consider lifting the weaponry sales ban towards Vietnam that it installed since in the past during the Vietnam War.
That's correct. And then, in fact, the Hanoi, the city of Vietnam, is also continues to work with the ASEAN, within ASEAN as well, despite the organization is still being a bit toothless when it comes to South China Sea problems. And the whole nation, Vietnam, in overall, they have been pushing really busily the friendship with the other nation as well, including India, Russia, even Australia.
which is great because you need to make a lot more friends to defeat.
Yeah.
I won't say defeat, but to at least to not make China step down on you. In a way, they are also forming this new strategic partnership with the Philippines. So you know that Vietnam is not bulging off
Right.
the roof. They are definitely trying to defend themselves as much as they can. And Hanoi continues to work within ASEAN too, despite the organization still being seen as a toothless tiger when it comes to South China Sea issues. So from the US, Vietnam and China alliance, we are also seeing a lot of problem that is brewing in Myanmar, and this time it's not just the Rohingya issue, it's the issue of an anti-migrant protest that is being planned in Myanmar troubled Rakhine State.
So Rakhine State is famous for having a lot of migrants there, including Rohingya as well as the Bangladeshis as well. So what happened is this: the country Myanmar has yet to clearly state that what will happen to these migrants who are still there, who haven't even escaped properly from the countries, and also who are not deemed to be from the Bangladesh territory. But however, these rescue operations have stirred anger among Buddhist hardlines and also citizens in Rakhine who want the central government to cease helping any migrants there. So which is pretty serious, and this is definitely relates to the human rights again. And of course, anti-migrants, they protest, they want to plan something for this troubled Rakhine State as well.
There seem to be a lot of xenophobic attitudes towards the Rohingya and other migrants that look like the Rohingya. In fact, the word Rohingya is definitely not being used at all in Myanmar. They're being called as the Bengali, and they are of course being seen as a stateless group of people because even the Bangladeshi government has refused to accept them. And what they are doing right now for the Buddhist nationalists in Rakhine State is to push out the Rohingya altogether, and what they are pressuring by the Bangladeshi government is to accept. So the government of Myanmar is definitely pressuring the government of Bangladesh to say that, hey, this is your people, go and accept it. It's not our job to shelter them or to give them a state. That is a pretty intense way of trying to get rid of a community.
But at the same time, they have been living there, and also at least a small token of rights need to be given to all this community. However, they are also just like how Vietnam is apparently ping pong between China and the US. They are also being ping pong, but in a very bad state by the government to these two countries, and they are not being accepted for a long, long time.
And you don't even have to talk about Bangladesh and Myanmar. Even here at our Nusantara shore, Indonesia's foreign ministry has said that temporary shelters for Rohingya asylum seekers and Bangladesh in Aceh and Medan, North Sumatra, would be built in areas separated from residential areas. So seems like these refugees are also being, I would say, just not being able to mix around with the locals. They're being seen as an outsiders and being treated as well as an outsiders. It's pretty sad to see that ASEAN countries are not doing justice towards refugees' rights, and they are doing this half-heartedly.
And that's when a lot of questions are raised from outside of ASEAN regions, where is the ASEAN way to solve all this problem, and these problems cannot be ignored anymore because it will only be highlighted via medias and other source of platforms to make sure the public is aware of these problems, and the government really needs to do something about it without just being ignorant and push them aside.
Yeah, push them aside, single them out. And then the reason for the Indonesia government is because they want to make it easy for local authorities to monitor the migrants, as well as protecting against any diseases being transmitted to the locals. That is fine, but I personally think that what they are doing is systematically singling them out and trying to give the message that you do not belong to Indonesia as well, which is kind of sad because recently there is a huge number of asylum seekers, around 7,000 of them, and Malaysia, Indonesia and Thailand has agreed to provide temporary shelters to them until they could, of course, resettle in a third country by the international community within 1 year.
And also, according to the Director of International Security, Andy Rajmianto, he said some of them actually suffer from a lot of diseases, and it also comes with the health issues and also medical services that can be provided to them, and that this kind of disease can be spread throughout the countries as well.
But do you think they should be singled out and put in a place just like a concentration camp? They said that it's not as severe as in Myanmar.
I will say that's very cruel way of sort of their terms so-called taking care of them. But this is not a taking care of in the good condition. They just single them out, putting them in the corner and waiting for something to happen.
And the word is within 1 year. So what would happen after that 1 year if some of them are still not being resettled into a third country?
Perhaps there will be persecutions or other kinds of orders, which will be very unfair to that community.
See, these are issues that ASEAN need to foresee before embarking on the refugee temporary shelter. It needs to see what is its role on refugee resettlement within ASEAN nation. We'll take one short break. When we return, we will discuss on economy and business news in Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Grace.
And of course, you are back with us again. And with us now, we are going to talk about economic and business news. And apparently, ASEAN will be the next global factory.
Wow.
So it's no longer China.
That's very ambitious, to be honest. Well, in fact, ASEAN Economic Community, which is AEC, which we hope to achieve by the end of this year, it's likely come to the fruition by the end of the year, would see the emergence of single market with the free movement of goods, services, investment, and skilled labor. Well, all these elements that we've been talking about so far in regards to ASEAN, another question could be asked, can ASEAN really overtake China here? And we are talking about the single market from all these 10 member states.
But that's the thing. When you say a single market, when it comes to AEC, it focuses more on skilled labor, or probably on skilled labor only. But when ASEAN is being seen as the next global factory, that means it will be taking over China with in terms of unskilled labor.
Right.
This is because China manufacturer has mostly set up operations in Southeast Asia, and particularly the CLMV countries, because of the rising labor costs, and among other reasons have driven a lot of the Chinese companies to not have their manufacturing plants in China. And it's kind of weird because you're talking about AEC, single market, skilled labor, but the reality is we are only going to take over the place of China in terms of being the hub for unskilled laborers.
Yeah. That's very irony. Yeah. And at the same time, since 2010, ASEAN is China's largest export destination for textiles especially. And imports of these textile and apparels from ASEAN is also growing at a very rapid rate above 30% every year. And with all this having the textile industries, you both need both skilled and unskilled laborers at the same time. And the manufacturers in both China and ASEAN countries are complementing each other for sure in the production chain rather than competing with each other.
So there you go. Rising costs in China is the main factor that pushes a lot of the manufacturers from China to seek options elsewhere with the attractive policy by other countries as incentive Through their bases in ASEAN countries, the manufacturers can also develop another market for their products, such as European countries and the US, because probably products from Southeast Asia is not seen that it's not as being perceived as inferior compared to probably China.
But maybe, and then China does produce a lot of products, and it's also because of the credibility, perhaps from the consumer's point of view. When people say it's China made, perhaps the credibility still falls on the Southeast Asia.
Talking about AEC, another country that is also targeting reforms is, of course, our dear neighbor Brunei Darussalam.
And also with the target launch of AEC for sure, Brunei is moving to make its business climate more competitive, and also it is via the raft of the regulatory changes as well.
But do you think they can be that competitive?
You mean the Brunei?
Yeah.
Well, that's a question that we need to ask because it is part of ASEAN. And then,
It's true.
yeah.
But you know, a country that is so close and some of them have
Right.
Sharia law, it's hard to attract good businesses in a way.
Well, it also depends on the transparency and how clear the regulatory systems is to them, so that we can make deals out of it still. But then the question is, how far can we make deals when it comes to AEC?
That's true. And because of that, Brunei is trying to convince businesses by also saying that it's moving to provide enterprises with a stable operating environment, making
Right.
business practices more flexible and improve cost competitiveness. There will be more transparent rules and regulations for importers and exporters, as well as access to settlement procedures for when trade disputes arise. So they're trying to make trying to ease the business processes in Brunei. But easing business processes, is it good enough to bring Brunei forward in AEC?
Well, that's another things that we still, because like we mentioned, we will keep on raising the questions one after the other. And like you mentioned, that all these current regulations were rooted in providing protection for exporters of locally made products and designs. And all this labor market we're also talking about here, because when it comes to AEC, it's very important. And all these SMEs as well also have emerged as topical issues ahead of the integration as well.
Mm-hmm. And what we are seeing right now, that the Sultanate's labor market and the SMEs segment has also emerged as a topical issue ahead of integration. Smaller businesses currently account for only 22% of total employment in the country, which remains dominated by the oil and gas sector. Brunei seems to be relying a lot on its natural resources, which is not healthy, because you need to have a strong and healthy local SMEs, and of course MNC as well, in a way that you empower local communities to produce innovation and good local products.
Right. So we hope that still Brunei is part of ASEAN, and then to make deals with them, it may seem a bit difficult because of their status. However, to reach the single market target as being an ASEAN way, so-called, hope that we can achieve by the end of this year.
We'll take another short break. When we return, we will focus on the social cultural aspect of Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is
And
Grace.
of course, you are with us on the social cultural aspect of Southeast Asia. And well, a lot of people were on the television set last weekend, right?
Yeah, it was just on the Saturday, but it was Sunday early morning. Yes.
In Malaysia.
Yeah.
And did you watch
Yes, I did
the
watch.
Champions League
I
final?
I followed the Champions League final, and it was pretty intense towards the end of the game. And a lot of people did root for Juventus, but
So it's
it was
called
kind of
Juventus or Juventus?
it's Juventus Italian,
Mm.
and the Barcelona. it was undeniable that they were quite strong at that match, and it was 3-1. And towards the extra time they were given, they scored one more, so it was just 2-1 all the way. And according to it would have met the old people's prediction, but they just scored one more.
So in a way, that are you saying the Juventus now hold the record for the final defeats, this being their 6th?
Well, Juventus, for the past 10 years, they were hardly up for this Champions League. They were not in the list properly, but they're making up to this far as something to all this Juventus team. But Barcelona is very well known for having very strong team members, including Messi's and Neymar, as well as Suarez inside. So this is something for bringing a lot of expectation from, especially from Juventus fans.
So are you saying that Gauri actually cried in her bed because...
Well, I don't know. We'll see tomorrow when she comes to the office.
So on the other hand, besides the Champions League, what is kind of such a big deal right now is South Koreans are trumping in the US robot challenge. South Korean boffins carried home the $2 million top prize during the weekend after their robot triumph in a disaster response challenge inspired by the 2011 Fukushima nuclear meltdown in Japan.
It was very impressive by looking at how South Koreans came up with this robot to come up with a disaster response robot, and it's really amazing how they functioned for this matter. But it's really not just about money, but the whole team member, they need to give the kudos of this whole effort they made after 3-year robotic contest organized by Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, which commissions advanced research for the U.S. Defense Department as well. So each robot had 2 chances to compete an obstacle course comprising 8 tasks, including driving, going through the door, opening a valve, and punching through the wall, dealing with the rubble and stairs.
It's not easy as a robot.
That's not easy, and it's very organized and systematic. And for robots to deal with just those kind of situations, they also need to be very flexible because...
So Grace, I think ASEAN should focus more on R&D. Trying to create more competition like this is much more awesome.
But it also comes with whether the system or even all this equipment are properly provided to the nations or not.
On the other hand, sad news that is happening in South Korea right now. So regarding on the MERS outbreak, 2,300 plus are being quarantined. 1,800 schools are being closed in South Korea.
And this is very serious because MERS is a short form for Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, which is very dangerous once it's attacked. And now it's suspected that one of perhaps doctors from outside could have brought this disease and made it even worse. So what the government took the action for the immediate reactions to this disease is to close down the schools and ask people to wear masks first in public.
And it's really sad because until now, doctors and scientists do not know the exact source or mode of its transmission. But you can take steps to prevent MERS, like washing your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Of course, you need to use alcohol-based sanitizer as well if the soap and water are not available. Cover your nose and mouth with tissue when you cough and sneeze. And avoid touching your eyes, nose and mouth with unwashed hands. Avoid personal contact such as kissing, sharing cups or eating utensils with sick people, and clean and disinfect frequently touch surface and objects. That's not easy. I guess your parents and relatives in South Korea have to be extra careful.
Well, for sure they need to be careful, and it's something that all people in Korea they have been practicing so far, because once you are diagnosed with this MERS, it's very serious to be cured from this disease. So this is very serious, and in fact Kang Shi-moon, the Seoul chief of police, he said it will enforce the quarantine orders for those suspected of having MERS, and a lot of steps are taken in the government itself. So hoping that we can find a solution to this disease, just like how the other disease outbreak happened, like SARS, and also a lot of other that in the history we have all these solutions to the history. So hope that this particular outbreak can bring
can be contained in a way.
yeah, come up with a solution to cure
But
these people.
one solution has been solved in Beijing, and it's not the outbreak of MERS. It's about sex and condoms.
Oh, it's not a disease at least.
So campus condom machines are being planned for Beijing.
Right. Oh, it's not something new, isn't it? I mean, it was also implemented in other countries, and I guess China want to also protect all this. Yeah, they want to protect, and also it's a baby. Maybe it's also another way of having birth control in the nation.
Like they already have their one-child policy. What's
Exactly.
more? Anyway, that's all from our news today. We will take one short break. When we return, we will have the second segment of today, where we discuss on our Monday morning matters.
And don't forget to visit us at our main channel, which is our website at durianasian.com, as well as we have 4 other social channels, which are Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
And you can always listen to us on the go by downloading the TuneIn app and search for Durian ASEAN, or you can go straight to your desktop and search for durianasian.com and listen to us live. We will take one short break together with an Asia Calling news. Besides that, of course, you will be listening to our second segment where we'll discuss about the EU-ASEAN relation, which is an underrated affair apparently. Bye.